Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. We're back like we never left. Of course, follow at Barroom Network on Twitter for all the great shows that we have going on here. We're streaming live on YouTube right now, myself and Ross included. Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you can get the audio-only versions of the show. Follow Ross on Twitter. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. Follow myself at The Real Evan Mack. And feel free to chime in as we go throughout the show. It's been quite the layoff. We got a lot to discuss with only a couple of shows left to end the year. Right, Ross?
That's right. 2023 is over. Yeah, absolutely. We are wrapping this up, and it's eggnog season right now. It's socks as Christmas gift season.
Oh, it's nog season, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. See,
you know I love my $13 Oberweis eggnog that I drink by myself.
That's right.
I just drink that shit in my house.
Put a little Bacardi in there. You're all good.
Yeah, buddy. Yes, sir. Holidays. So we'll have a lot to get to on the show today, as this is a Christmas holiday-centric Mac and Reed edition. We'll do more of a 2023 wrap-up next week, but preview of that, because we can't pack it all into just 2 hours, folks. So got a lot to get to with the rest of this show. Bears, of course, Bears heavy. I was in Cleveland for that debacle. Talk about it a little bit, and then preview the last 3 games here, the questions surrounding Justin Fields and the defense, the offense, coaching, everything in between. It'll be Bears heavy, and then we'll talk NFL throughout the show as well. Sprinkle some NBA in there. Again, things we didn't get to over these last couple weeks, music, pop culture beyond. So many things. Ross, you ready for Christmas? How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm ready. We got the gifts already.
New ink for the viewers here too. If you're one of our viewers on YouTube here, Ross got some new ink here. Playlist God.
Number is 19 and 20 at this point. I started losing track about how many I got these days.
I respect it.
Somebody asked me, like, does it hurt? I was like, you know what? At this point, no. You get so used to it. No, it doesn't hurt anymore.
I would think so. Still, my body, of course, is a temple, Ross. So I'm not doing that to myself. I have none, but we'll see. Who knows? I could go through a midlife crisis any day now. Let's talk Bears to lead the show, Ross, as they came off that terrible loss to the Browns. Again, I was at that rainy, dreary game, and it was bleak when, you go up and, of course, you give up the 10-point lead into the fourth quarter. It was very typical. It was like a little more than a year since I'd seen the Bears do something similarly. I can't go to Bears games. Would you rather, first of all, go to the game you went to in Kansas City where it was just, there was never a shot against the Chiefs where they, Chiefs hung 50 on them? Or would you rather see one of these meltdown games like Detroit or the Browns?
Yeah.
Or insert other goddamn game here.
Well, at least I could say that.
Competitive.
Yeah, at least I could say, though, I was in Kansas City for barbecue, right? Of course. And
first big Taylor Swift moment too.
I was gonna say first time I was in the same building with Taylor Swift, and he's sort of defending champions. I think anytime you see greatness on display, like two guys going to the Hall of Fame and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, you're okay with that. It's kind of like watching Steph Curry and the Warriors blow out the Bulls or something like that. You're kind of okay with that. But also I was drunk by like halftime at that point. I didn't care anymore. we're just going to get hammered.
reminiscent of our Tampa game when we saw Brady do
Yes.
something similarly.
That's
And,
right.
you talk about the future Hall of Famers, and no discredit to Joe Flacco. Maybe, no, I don't think so.
No.
But Joe Flacco, like,
All very good.
to lose to Joe Flacco was just a different type of just woe that I had not felt as a Bears fan in that game, when he had 3 interceptions in the game and almost 400 yards, making that, helping that late push for Cleveland to go over the top and kick the field goal and go up 2017. Just touching on that game, obviously we know that defense played pretty well. That they capitalized on turnovers, had a interception return for a touchdown. We saw the good Justin Fields for most of the game. We saw that defense, again, going back to them, front four really showed up and played well, pressuring Flacco and company. And albeit I know it's an old Joe Flacco back there, but did their job. And, the Bears defense at this point are like second in the league in interceptions. It's very impressive to see the turnaround from how poorly they started. But the offense, you take that Darnell Mooney catch, on a Hail Mary out of it, which is, pretty tough to make in the moment. The offense couldn't take advantage of enough opportunities. It goes back to coaching again, before halftime, not trying a field goal to put you up another 3 points that clearly you needed. It was just another one in the series of just bad Bears beats in this season, when you figured you had these winnable games in the last 4 of the season. You thought that, now we were talking about the Bears potentially winning out after stringing together a couple NFC North wins with the Vikings and Lions, but then it came to a screeching halt with this just devastating Browns game. And now you got the Cardinals, Falcons, and Packers, none of them world beaters, and none of them likely to sniff the playoffs at this point. You could give us your thoughts briefly on that Browns game and sort of takeaways or recurring themes that you saw that came up in that game, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, I think the recurring theme that we saw is, under the Matt Eberflus era, this is about the 4th time now that they've blown a double-digit lead in the 4th quarter. And that's just unacceptable as a football team in the NFL. You've had the Lions game this year. You've had that Denver game this year. Now you have this game. Those are 3 wins right there where, if you just handled your business, you would have been firmly in the playoff race. I mean, we saw the Packers lose. They don't look good right now. The Bears should be fighting for a 6th or 7th seed going into this weekend. Like with you hit on the head, 3 very winnable games here to wrap up the season. But instead, your defense that has been playing well, but you can't let Joe Flacco throw for 250 yards in 1 quarter, in the 4th quarter. This guy was on the sofa, 2 weeks ago. That's just unacceptable. Crazy. And then on the offensive side of things, Luke Getsy and that offense, when they get these leads in the 4th quarter, they get very conservative and they really tighten up, and defenses take notice of that. And, these 4th quarters, they're 15 minutes in game time, but they're a long time in real time. And it's a lot of time for momentum to switch, for defenses to get their offense back in the game, and for players to make plays. And, he just flat out continues to be conservative in these quarters. I will say, the play of the game for me was the Justin Fields on 4th down, trying to get the 4th and 1, the bootleg to the outside to ice it right after if he gets the 1st down, the Bears probably seemingly can kill more clock, kick a field goal, and ice that game. And a lot of people were blaming Darnell Mooney for missing the block. In my opinion, I wouldn't have him in that situation to block. He's about 172 pounds, or he's just not the kind of guy that you want blocking in that key spot on a 4th and 1 situation. Justin also, could have hit DJ Moore there. He was open coming off for a big game, potentially a touchdown. But those are just kind of mistakes that this team has made throughout the year. They have lost key close games because they play it very safe, but they also play it too tight. And, the sphincter just tightens up a little bit. In the NFL, you can't do that. Joe Flacco looked as, they called him Joe Cool back in the day. He looked as cool as a cucumber in the 4th quarter, despite the fact that he had some of the most atrocious turnovers that we've seen all season. He didn't care. And it also helps when your defense decides to have a 300-pound lineman drop into coverage to guard David Njoku, who looks like he was built in a lab if you were creating a tight end in a factory. And of course he's going to give up 3rd and 15 to Njoku with that situation. Bad call by Matt Eberflus.
Yeah, that was tough to watch amongst, the rally by Joe Flacco, and just to see him, go basically double Justin Fields' production there. This is, again, going back to recurring themes of this season and Justin Fields' future just being in doubt here in Chicago, and already looking ahead to a Caleb Williams or Drake May or one of these young guys coming out of the draft at this point. Throwing for a couple interceptions and taking those sacks, it was very costly. Only 19 completions, under 200 yards again, making some plays with his feet when he needed to, but very pedestrian for him when it was only 7 rushes for 30 yards. And then just not really able to spread it around as he would like to, next to DJ Moore. DJ Moore should certainly have had a more productive day, I would think, against that Browns defense. Despite the elements, you definitely factor that in. But look at Joe Flacco on the other side. Tyler Scott was the second leading receiver. That you take that really great throw against, or that throw for the touchdown with Cole Kmet out of the equation, then it was a pretty bad day for Justin Fields. So, we can put that Browns game in the rearview mirror. But as far as Justin Fields, this has been the big discussion this past week, as it is every week, because it's his audition to maybe get a franchise tag, to maybe pick up his, 5th-year option, to maybe extend him, keep him in Chicago or don't. This is that big question. And I think based on that Browns game, it's a negative, right? Where you haven't seen the great Justin Fields, but there's still those folks out there who would say the play calling is holding him back. Did this do anything to influence you either way, Ross?
No, in my opinion, I thought that he needed to win out to justify, no pun intended, keeping his job long term with the Bears. And again, listen, a lot went wrong that wasn't his fault. The Robert Tonyan drop is high on the list, right? That's just an absolutely brutal drop that should have gone for a 75-yard touchdown. That also would have boosted his numbers, so on and so forth. We get it. The pressure that the Browns were putting on, and the fact that the Bears don't have any capable running backs on their roster to be able to pick up a blitz is 100% a problem. That's not his fault. I don't blame that on him. But all in all, he still seems to struggle in these games against top level defenses. And, you just can't do that. If you want to be a $40+ million a year quarterback, and you want to be a quarterback on a team that leads, leading a team to a playoff berth, you've got to be able to perform at a higher level against the top level defenses. And look, the Bears have been playing like a very good defense this season, and Joe Flacco still found a way to put up over 200 yards in one quarter, despite the fact that he was having a very bad game. And so those kinds of things still, there's just a lot of question marks still for Justin. I tend to lean still at this point because he hasn't shown enough consistently that if the Bears do have a top 2 pick, they're going to take one of these quarterbacks. I think that they really are and will fall in love with Caleb Williams. But also the Panthers might win another football game, and that could also throw a wrinkle in some things too, because there are some teams, bartering for that top position. So, it's still very much in the air right now. I think we all, putting everything aside, would love to see Justin in the last 3 games of the year really, really show, ball out, put some things together. You've got a bad Arizona team coming in this Sunday. It's their defense stinks. They're one of the worst teams in football. It's going to be, for all purposes, 45 degrees and beautiful in Chicago on Sunday. That's the kind of game that you should put up for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that's just the kind of thing that we haven't seen consistently from Justin. And that's why I think a lot of people are saying, at this point, he's essentially ran out of time as quarterback for the Chicago Bears. I'm not quite there yet, but I do think that the odds are stacked against him right now.
It's tough to separate his performance from just the rest of the team overall. And, you again, can't take much away from the defense. I mean, I get it that they allowed almost 400 yards passing to Joe Flacco, especially when it was a downpour to start that game. but they, capitalized. They put the Bears in a good position by getting that turnover for a touchdown, and repeatedly made some pretty big plays throughout. But again, going back to Justin Fields and this whole situation with him, I still think that these 3 games mean a lot. Obviously, every game counts for if you're Justin Fields in this situation as well. Because it's his career he's playing for. If he wants to stay in Chicago, I don't think he really, that part of it doesn't really cross my mind as much. It's more his future as an NFL quarterback, totally, and getting paid what he deserves and what he thinks his worth is compared to Jalen Hurts and compared to Pat Mahomes and all these guys who are getting big heydays throughout the NFL. It's tough, and when you see the hype around a Caleb Williams, when you traded up to get Justin Fields initially, you gave him every benefit to play it out. I think despite coaching staff and all that, there's that side of you that says we need to see more. We need to see the passing yards to go up, your pocket presence, your, just everything in your quarterback IQ go up more as you continue to grow and develop as an NFL quarterback. And now the Bears just seem kind of ready to reset just based on Justin Fields. And again, like you said repeatedly, Ross, it's not all on him as far as blame is concerned. It's tough to see that sort of wasted talent if he were to end this season and go on to the Falcons, which is that big rumored team out there, or any other team. I mean, I'd certainly root for him because he's still a younger guy, which we forget about. And, which we haven't even talked about. Obviously, the money, which we've talked about in previous podcasts, though, the money is an issue, and that factors into your decision to go ahead and keep Justin Fields or let him walk. But, it looks like a Jalen Johnson situation where he has played really well, where he could probably get a long-term extension at this point. I know you just paid Montez Sweat. You don't want a ton of money paid out to these guys on defense, and just as a whole, when you have a glaring issue at quarterback. But it's certainly the possibility to franchise him, to give it another run. But I'm not sure that the organization sees it. And again, it's coupled to that whole Eberflus situation. So going back to, the Browns and the rest of these games, another collapse by Eberflus, where does that leave you with him?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's tough. I think that he's the one fighting the most for his job these last 3 weeks of the season, because on one side of it, the Bears have blown 3 very, very winnable games. In fact, 3 games that they should have won, which means that they should have 8 wins right now, right, instead of 5. And if they were 8-6, we'd be having a very different, conversation today, because I think we'd be saying that all 3 guys are coming back: Fields, Getsy, and Eberflus. With that said, I think that the Bears have improved over the season, and Eberflus and his defense especially has shown signs. And I think that, he could go into the offseason saying, listen, I'm building something here that I think that we can have some kind of continuity. You got to give me a new quarterback, because I can't quite win with this one. There's my thumbs up. And then you have to definitely get me a new offensive coordinator. And so I think that Luke Getsy and Justin Fields could be the sacrificial lambs if Matt Eberflus keeps his job. I will say this: I think the most important game of the season for Matt Eberflus will be Week 18 against the Green Bay Packers, regardless of what the record situation looks like, because we know how George McCaskey is, especially when playing the Packers. He wants a coach that can start beating that franchise. I think if Matt Eberflus were to go into Green Bay and somehow get a win there, and even if that's their, let's say that's their 7th win of the season, but number 7 came against the Green Bay Packers, I think all of a sudden Matt Eberflus is looking pretty decent to save his job.
That's, I mean, considering the season he's had, very tumultuous, like you said, Ross, it does come down to, just as Justin Fields is playing for his career and his future, that Eberflus certainly is. And, if you saw the press conference today, you can sort of leave it up for interpretation as far as his comments about Luke Getsy, being asked about him. He's very good about playing the politician role, right, where he's just ducking a lot of these questions, I feel like. And by the way, if you're watching live on YouTube, feel free to chime in Drop a comment if we haven't hit anything you want to talk about regarding the Bears. But it does feel like these are obviously very important last 3 games for Matt Eberflus when you had those big losses, where you had these guaranteed wins basically, and then to let them go was just brutal for his reputation. Press conference, demeanor doesn't help you at all. I'm not sure where I stand on Matt Eberflus, but I do know where I stand on with Luke Getsy. And, I've seen enough of the tape where I think that you could theoretically run back Matt Eberflus, Justin Fields, and get a different offensive coordinator, and I'd be fine with that.
Sure.
I'd be slightly optimistic with that, at least. I don't think the two are tied together necessarily, but I do know what you're talking about I do know where you're coming from with Eberflus, and maybe he's just saying, all right, I got to have a sacrificial lamb here, and that guy's Justin Fields. We have this draft capital coming in, but there's a lot of appeal to just getting a Marvin Harrison, another big weapon, and then getting either a killer edge rusher or a nice young nasty offensive tackle or interior lineman, whatever you need, and then hopefully making a push in the offseason to get free agents. And of course, you have a ton of draft picks additionally with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot in flux, and I think it's certainly tied the Bears and Panthers. It looks like could both finish. Panthers certainly look like they're locked in with that number 1 pick, and it's up to the Bears what to do with that. And the Bears being out of the playoff race only behooves them to continue to lose games, and now they either can do what Ryan Poles did last year, and go ahead and trade that draft capital and figure out if you want more of it. But it's just a very tough decision for the Bears right now, and I don't blame the organization. I mean, I fault them for obviously putting us in this position, but it's a very tough decision when it comes down to both the quarterback and head coach being the quote unquote problem in a lot of folks' eyes.
Yeah, and I think the big part of it is going to come from there's a lot of nuance involved that we are not privy to, and I think that's going to be a big part of it. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of times we take the personality out of the situation, and we take the fact we take the camaraderie out of the situation because we're just not there. None of us are there. We're not in the locker rooms. We don't know, how Justin, texts DJ Moore or what the guys on defense or do they fight for him, stuff like that. So I think the most important thing for Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren, for that matter, is at the end of the year, your exit interviews are going to be very important. What your players have to say about your head coach and your quarterback are going to be very important as you decide if you want to keep these guys or not. And then, from there, it's going to come down to when Ryan Poles starts to have those first conversations with Caleb Williams and Drake May, he's gonna have to decide, okay, are these guys grown enough for me to put them in a situation and have a guy like Montez Sweat and Tremaine Edmonds and Jalen Johnson and some guys like that want to fight for him and go to battle for him like they clearly want to right now for Justin Fields. And I think that can't be understated. What helps Justin going forward is those guys in that locker room on both sides of the ball absolutely adore him. I think they think the world of him. I think they know that he busts his ass every single week and that he's a leader in that locker room, and that goes a long way. And I think, a lot of them to a man right now will never throw him under the bus, but a lot of them probably think that they can continue to build around him. Now, that's where Ryan Poles is going to have to take all of his information, put it all together, and start literally doing a pros and cons and say, listen, is this a guy that I can give $45 million a year to, because I think he can win it? Or am I just kind of blinded by, what guys are saying in the moment because they love him, but they'll also fight for Caleb Williams as well? That's going to be really difficult for him to navigate through. I want him to take his time and make an intelligent, informed decision. And I will say at this point, he's earned the benefit of the doubt right now. He should have all of our trust in this situation, regardless of what he does. And we got a long way to go. We're in December. This is not going to get decided probably until March at the earliest. So, we've got a lot to see what happens between now and then.
Certainly do. And we've talked ad nauseum about Justin Fields and Matt Eberflus and their future too. But, obviously obviously Jalen Johnson, moving on from Justin Fields, Jalen Johnson is playing for a big time contract. And, he said he wants to stay with the Bears repeatedly. And I understand that, especially with the pieces you now have on the defense with Montez Sweat. That linebacking core is looking pretty good if they remain healthy. And then that secondary looks pretty good going forward. And so now, you wonder what to do as far as, obviously you're going to have to continue to stockpile some talent on that defensive line in addition to Montez Sweat. But with Jalen Johnson, you get the feeling, Ross, if it's more a franchise tag situation, or is he, I feel like every time I've heard his name mentioned, in the national media, it's certainly talking about him in the air of the top 5 cornerbacks in the league. He might make, he certainly looks like a Pro Bowler right now to the NFC. Might make all pro because he's been very good, not always playing great competition, but, just everything that I've seen from him, it's really hitting his prime, kind of a la what like Eddie Jackson was doing to get his big time contract from the Bears.
Ever since that whole, trade requesting came out, he's nothing but elevate his game to an even bigger level than it was before. And, he's one of 3 corners in the league right now who have given up 250 yards or less in the passing game this entire season, which is just an absolutely absurd stat. He is playing at a top 5 corner level. He's got the interceptions now to back it up. The Bears lead the league right now in interceptions on defense, in large part due to Jalen Johnson and the way he's elevated his game. I hope it doesn't come to a franchise tag because I think that eats a little bit more into your cap space. And quite frankly, I think he deserves the money. I would pay him tomorrow. And we heard him, have his comments today saying that he wants to stay in Chicago. He wants to work this thing out. I think that both sides should come together within the coming weeks and hammer out a deal. I'd give him $18 to $20 million a year. I have zero qualms about giving him that kind of money. He deserves that money. You're not paying anybody else on this football team like right now currently, other than Tremaine Edmonds and Montez Sweat. Those are your highest paid guys right now on the roster. At some point, when you're rebuilding, it has to end. You have to say, we want to retain the top level quality talent that we already have. Because if you don't bring him back, you're just causing another hole in the draft. You got to fill it in somewhere else, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. He's young. He's great. Pay him. Pay him his money. Like you have it. Give him his money. He's earned it. I don't care about the cap hit this year. People always talk about, well, he's not worth, this cap hit right now. Guess what? Today's money is not tomorrow's money. He gets paid $18 million a year this year. Somebody's going to get $19, $21, $22 million the year after that, and the year after that. And that's how it works in the NFL. Look at Eddie Jackson's contract right now. Eddie Jackson used to be the first and second highest paid safety in the league. Now he's like 9th or 10th. Like it always goes up. I hate when people bring that up.
Yesterday's price is not today's price,
Yesterday's
right?
price is not today's price. Also,
Love it.
Marlo Stansfield would say the price of the brick is going up, and the price of the Jalen Johnson brick has gone up over the last few weeks.
I co-sign everything you said. 24 years old. He's playing. He's balling out right now. He's young. He's successful. Most successful at his position. One of the most successful in the league. I mean, he's tied with Tremaine Edmonds for the team lead in interceptions right now. And he's been just balling out. I love that stat where, he's allowing under 200 yards to receivers he's lined up against throughout the season. Really good bright spot for the Chicago Bears defense. So, transitioning as we're focusing on the Bears here, but to the rest of these games as it's out with a whimper as far as the schedule is concerned, with the Bears now playing the Cardinals, who are, probably as much of a wreck as the Bears. I mean, they have a lot tied into Kyler Murray, which, at least the Bears haven't hitched their wagon to someone like Kyler Murray to that regard. I don't know how this is a 325 game, by the way, but I digress.
Yes.
But Arizona, looking at these last 3 games in this long season, you got Arizona, you got the Falcons, the suitor for Justin Fields, a New Year's Eve game, and then the Packers to end it. Over the course of these last 3 games, I think obviously we're trying to again evaluate Justin Fields and what he brings to the table, if he is that guy, if you're going to bring him back as the starter, or reset and go the route of the NFL draft at this point. And then, you're seeing who can stay, who can go with those offensive and defensive role players. This offensive line has been in flux. We know that the young guys, we know that right side is looking pretty good, but like Nate Davis has not played a full season. Tevin Jenkins, it's pretty clear. Darnell Wright, their futures are pretty clear. But what are you going to do with that left side? That seems to be the more problematic side of the line. And the defense, again, defensive line, it's really just, Yannick Ngakoue on this rental. But Montez Sweat is locked in there. You're going to see, hopefully, what you saw out of Jalen Johnson and Montez Sweat and Tremaine Edmonds over the last couple games that they've had and peaking. But yeah, is there what are you looking forward to, Ross, over the last few games, starting with the Cardinals this Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking to see if a guy like Montez Sweat and that defense continue to build going forward. Because again, if Matt Eberflus is fighting for his job right now, it's going to be on the strength of his defense really bottling up Kyler Murray and putting them, putting their season in the body bag for good, right? On the offensive side of things, I think the running game has really gotten off track the last few weeks. What was supposed to be a good 3-headed monster of Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, and Roshan Johnson really just has sputtered the last few weeks. I've been disappointed with them in the running game and in the pass protection game, most importantly. So, they need to get the running game back going again. But to me, it all centers on number one, right? You want to see just a big game from him, something that I want him to go down fighting. Or go out showing that he can save his job. I don't know if this is a week-to-week thing right now, and if these 3 games are going to matter going forward. But I want to at least act like it for a moment, and let's see what happens. So, this is the kind of game on Sunday that if the Bears had any pride, and I think they do, and want to stick with some kind of continuity going forward, they should win this game. They should put up 30, 35 points against this Cardinals team. They should blow them out, Otherwise, if it doesn't look like that, the offense doesn't look good, defense looks shaky, Cardinals hang around, heaven forbid Cardinals win, then all of a sudden we're having a much different conversation next week, and we're talking about everybody's got to go. Like, it's clean house time.
The competition only gets worse from here, right? Well, as far as the Falcons and Cardinals are concerned, you barely beat the Panthers. You going back to that Thursday night game, like this schedule for the Bears has not been world beaters, that's for sure. It's just been more battling for the top 5 picks in the NFL draft upcoming. I second what you said and everything we talked about as far as this is that big 3-game stretch audition for Matt Eberflus and for Justin Fields for their jobs at this point. Because every game certainly counts, no matter the competition. Got to win the ones you're supposed to, and win some of the ones you're not. So, to that end, that it all leads up to that Green Bay game, which will be very telling for the Bears' future. Those Bears players and coaches that we've mentioned future. Mm-hmm. But Arizona, you got to get that win, man. After that Browns loss, this is one of those games where it's everything should go right. In theory, they're going to wear those fake Michigan striped helmets type of deal, which I kind of like. I don't know what their win-loss record is as far as that's concerned, but nice Christmas Eve game. You go into the holidays with a nice feeling that it just sort of weight off your shoulder if you get that win. I think if you're Justin Fields and Eberflus and Co.
Yeah, absolutely. And technically, the playoff hopes are not completely dead. It's
Oh,
very much so on life support, and they need a lot of help. But yeah, listen, the over under this season, if you looked at the FanDuel and stuff like that, was at 7 wins. And so you want to at least be able to try and hit that number coming off a 3-win season last year. But it'd be nice if you could still win out and get to 8 wins. I think all in all, that would be a fairly successful season for the Bears if they were to somehow, some way get the 8 wins and beat Green Bay to wrap up Week 18.
It feels like they shouldn't even have 5 at this point, just with the way, the Browns game went and all these tough losses that we have seen. So hopefully we see some offensive fireworks. We continue to see the defense thrive a little bit, get some takeaways, and Jalen Johnson still playing like the season of his life right here, which is great to see. We see more Montez Sweat too. I'm all about obviously seeing a pass rush and seeing what we have on that defensive line as far as that is concerned. So it all goes down Sunday at 3:25, and the Bears are hosting the Cardinals. Let's move on, Ross, and talk about the rest of the NFL. You talked about odds, for the Bears over and under wins. I want to talk about MVP because this is all over the place. I know that certainly Brock Purdy seems like the leader, but you've heard of favorite go in and assert themselves like a Pat Mahomes, a Josh Allen. I know you like Lamar Jackson, who's also a good pick at this point. Jalen Hurts. Like all these guys talking about the last 3 games of the season, this is where they assert themselves as the MVP or not. Is it still Lamar Jackson or did somebody else sneak in at this point? Because it's been all over the place. This is also, we'll transition to all these backup quarterbacks after this, but these are all the studs.
Yeah, this has been a season of attrition in terms of guys getting hurt and stuff like that. Right now, I think that it has shifted a great deal in Brock Purdy's direction. Brock Purdy right now, 3,795 yards, 29 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. I get it. He's giving the ball to elite talent. Christian McCaffrey's got, 1,200 yards. He's going for 1,300 yards. Ayuk's over 1,000 yards. Deebo Samuel's great. George Kittle's great. Blah, blah, blah. I get it. Brock Purdy has been absolutely phenomenal this year as the point guard of that football team. The 49ers look like the most dominant team in football right now. And, to Grizz's point in the comments here, they have turned that award over the last couple of years into, it's not an MVP anymore. It has turned into a quarterback, award. Yeah, absolutely. So, at this point, it's Brock Purdy's trophy to lose. I think that Lamar Jackson, though, can make things interesting. Coincidentally enough, on Christmas night, we get Ravens going to Santa Clara to face the 49ers. And so, listen, if Lamar Jackson has a big game and he beats them and they move on to 12-3, then all of a sudden Lamar Jackson can really put his name into that situation. For right now, Brock Purdy has been playing the best football consistently all year out of everybody. Tyreek Hill, ever since they came out with that Offensive Player of the Year thing, that usually goes to the best non-quarterback out there. That's Tyreek Hill's award. I think he's something crazy like minus 600 right now to win that award. And then right now, Brock Purdy is the overwhelming favorite in the NFL to get MVP.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's so heavily weighted, that award, to, the quarterback, because the quarterback is, to their credit, obviously like one of those most pivotal positions in all of sports where, if you have a dog shit quarterback, you're just not going anywhere more often than not. And this has been that year where half the league is just reeling from quarterback injuries, Achilles injuries, ACLs, everything, thrown in there as far as adversity at the quarterback position. But who's going to come out on top? It's an exciting spin on it, is, seeing if Josh Allen can right the ship with the Bills at this point, where they were very close to missing the playoffs completely. They got to make a big push after these next 3 games to really vault themselves in there. Same can be said about Pat Mahomes. Has been kind of up and down. He's always in the conversation of that top 3. Jalen Hurts, just talk about his interception total or his lack of a passing game has been of that conversation. Lamar Jackson, not the same offensive fireworks that you see of a Joe Burrow or a Mahomes or these guys. more of a runner. But I think it's going to go to one of these guys at this point. Like you said, Brock Purdy, what a just run for him. And I think it'd be very fitting to see a guy who's like Mr. Irrelevant to go and be put into this insanely good offense and just have an MVP like that. It's not unheard of, obviously, in the NFL. We've seen it before, but it's crazy to see how loaded it is, and to think, with these guys that I've mentioned, if you put an all-pro quarterback out there, I just can't figure out if Brock Purdy passes that eye test. Is it just more of that system? And you talk about Shanahan, you talk about that offense as a whole. Christian McCaffrey is lighting it up, and the wide receiver options you have, and an all-pro tight end. That just embarrassment of riches.
Mhm.
Is Purdy really in that top tier at this point? And is he going to go from, being in a room share with friends to finally securing the bag at this point after being, quote unquote irrelevant?
Yeah, listen, I can't fault Brock Purdy for the talent around him, right? Because he's still, you could have the same conversation about Tua, right? And Tua's having a good year, but he's got elite talent around him in an elite system. But
Right.
in the past, we've seen great quarterbacks have elite talent around them. Ralph was right. Joe Montana had the greatest wide receiver of all time, and John Taylor and Roger Craig and all these other guys around him. Brock Purdy, to me, reminds me of another quarterback who was in a very similar situation than him, a guy that's undrafted and ended up winning, MVP and win a couple Super Bowls. He looks a lot like the old version of Kurt Warner to me. They're very similar in quarterbacks. And so Kurt Warner is in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Kurt Warner was able to do it for the Rams. Greatest show on turf. He kind of stumbled a little bit with the Giants, but I think a lot of people forgot too. He looked damn good with the Cardinals and got them to a Super Bowl, with the Cardinals as well, and came very close to winning that football game. That's how good he was. So I think Brock Purdy has got a lot of Kurt Warner in him. I think that he has deserved to win MVP, especially if he stays healthy the rest of the year and finishes things strong. I got no wishes against it. I think that, if he stayed healthy in that NFC Championship game last year, we might be talking about him in that Super Bowl last year against Pat Mahomes and not Jalen Hurts. So I can't wait to watch that game on Monday night. Definitely going to be eggnog, a couple eggnogs deep, and put the little ones to bed after they've been playing with new toys all day, because to finish off Christmas night with 49ers Ravens, that is a true present for us football fans.
Gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yes,
Not Giants Eagles,
no,
not Tommy DeVito and Jalen Hurts. Ooh,
no, it's
that's
much
spicy.
better than watching It's a Wonderful Life for the fourth time.
On the note of Tommy DeVito, just talking about the backups that we've seen, Jake Browning, obviously with tough, big shoes to fill, if you will, with Joe Burrow going out, and he balled out last week against the Vikings. They got a win. And Gardner Minshew, a guy who was signed as a backup primarily, but I think a lot of folks are talking about him playing into a potential starting quarterback role into this next year. It's been real impressive. Baker Mayfield had a great game where he was, he set some record in Lambeau Field that was incredible. His 4 touchdowns and in leading, more importantly, the Bucs to a big win when they're trying to make this playoff push in a division that's pretty tight at this point. We heard Case Keenum's name, like you said, Ross. It's crazy to see, this relief, and talking about Tommy DeVito, and obviously that's a big story because the Giants are on national TV every week and all that. Even talking about the Seahawks and Drew Lock, coming in for Geno Smith. It's cool to see. You remember you harken back to quarterback, that whole series with Mahomes and
Yep.
Cousins and Mariota, guys who have been top tier all the way. But we talked about it. Like, I would like to see these sort of clipboard holders, the guys like a Josh McCown, who is journeyman, and they're just ready. I think that's just very impressive to come off the shelf like that and go ball out. I don't know if I didn't mention anybody that stuck out to you, but it does feel like that sort of year of the backup quarterback here to step into their shoes, right, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with Gardner Minshew. I mean, that also, shout out to Shane Steichen. How much do the Eagles miss him right now as their offense is struggling? He's got the Colts, getting ready for a playoff berth with a guy that they didn't think was going to get a snap this year because they drafted Anthony Richardson top 5 overall. I mean, we talked about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was playing with his kids on the sofa 3 weeks ago. He's got gray in his beard like I do, and all of a sudden he's out there throwing 215 yards in the fourth quarter. I think that's awesome. It goes to show you having a good backup is very important, especially for teams that have the good infrastructure in place. There are some teams out there that that are going to struggle. You saw when Kyler Murray wasn't out there. The Cardinals were absolutely terrible with their quarterback situation. Even look at the Steelers right now. How would you like to do a quarterback series with just the 3 Steelers quarterbacks, Trubisky, Pickett, and then Mason Rudolph? That is just a shit show right now. And, we already saw one person lose their job in Matt Canada. And, I think Mike Tomlin is safe because he has been a great coach, but nothing would shock me. And if they continue to fall apart the rest of the season here, in large part due to that quarterback situation, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Certainly will be. But Gardner Minshew, yeah, I do side with a lot of these folks that are saying that he could certainly get a starting job at this point, just the way that he is played. But, it's very reminiscent of I just had someone in my mind, but Gardner Minshew is in that mold of a guy who will come off the shelf and just go ahead and ball out. And I like, I feel like, your swagger comes into play at some point as a result of it. And to that end, I know that we talked about Daniel Jones getting the bag with the Giants, but Tommy DeVito, what does he do from here? Obviously he's capitalizing on all the New York fame at this point, but does he, play this into being a high paid backup, or does he try to, go and get a starting job somewhere else? Or is he just making appearances in delis and restaurants for the rest of his life?
Yeah, I think Tommy's on his 13th minute of fame right now. So milk it for as much as you can. Show up to every pizza shop in Brooklyn. Yeah, show up to every pizza shop in Brooklyn and in Queens. And if somebody walked by looking like Mookie from Do the Right Thing, take photos with him and all kinds of stuff like that. Because it's been a fun story, but we know how this movie ends. It doesn't end too well for him. I do think that he can stick around in the NFL because he can play a little bit, but he certainly is not a starting quarterback in this league. I think the Giants right now are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. They don't suck enough to get a top, 3 quarterback. And also they're still paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year, which is just an absolutely atrocious contract, right? That's why you don't pay quarterbacks big money that you're not quite sure of, because then you end up in the New York Giants situation. And they could have just blown this whole thing up and been in the Drake May, Caleb Williams sweepstakes.
Tommy DeVito, just New Jersey Hall of Fame already, though. Unbelievable. And his agent, who repped like nobody until he repped Alfred Morris. I think it was like the only other client I saw of note, but he's in the Italian American Hall of Fame. Like, he's hilarious on the sideline there with his turtleneck.
We tried to strong arm a local pizza shop into giving them $10,000 more for an appearance. Get the hell out of here. What are you doing?
Here today, gone tomorrow. Look at that. Let's go to some quick hits, Ross, as we whip around. And, we haven't talked about the NBA at length. And I think there's not too much outside of this, the fucking in-game tournament I feel like we missed. And the Lakers raising their banner next to other championship banners and putting that there is a little bit suspect. But I think it'll be the in-season tournament will just be that we won't remember any of the outcome. I mean, the Lakers winning their first one, sure. Who cares? I think outside of that, when it was against the Pacers of all teams, we're in it now to see the teams who will make adjustments because these teams could look very different towards the trade deadline. I mean, certainly, from a Bulls perspective, we're talking about the rumors swirling around DeRozan and around Zach LaVine and the Bulls trying to press reset on this franchise and trying to just stockpile draft picks and whatever they can do to get better as a franchise, which is tough to do in their position. But NBA as a whole has been, it's fun. And talking about Christmas Day, there's always some fun matchups there. You certainly go back to these guys who are trying to solidify their legacies, in my opinion, as far as Steph Curry, who Shaq made in the news saying, "Are we going to talk about him as one of the greats or the greatest of all time?" When you put him up there with Jordan and LeBron with his stats and everything else, and of course LeBron playing yet another season of just top tier basketball, and the in-game season tournament doesn't mean much besides money and a little bit of clout, but it does go back to him leading a pretty great squad into the West and trying to make it really competitive again.
Yeah, and now you start to see like John Morant came back after that 25-game suspension.
Yeah.
He had a game winner yesterday. I think Christmas is the time where we start to turn a corner and we can start to pay attention a little bit more to the NBA. NFL kind of starts to get out the way, especially on Saturdays. We get those Saturday night games, the Sunday games, stuff like that. So it's still such a very, very long way to go. But right now you look at, there's some fun teams out there. The usual suspects are there, the Nuggets, the Celtics, stuff like that. But it's like, if you kind of look up and you pay attention, the Oklahoma City Thunder are like top 3 right now in the Western Conference. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a super fun budding superstar in the league. Orlando Magic are like they are like 16-9 right now, led by Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. And then the Timberwolves are like, they've got the best record in the Western Conference right now. And that's them being able to make it work with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. And Anthony Edwards is also a top 10 player in the league right now, who we won't talk about that abortion situation that happened this week. That was very, very strange, but very on brand for players in the NBA. So there's a lot of young, fun talent right now, all across the league right now. You can also just pop on the TV and catch Wemby any given night, which I always love to do because it's just such a freak of nature out there on the court. So I can't wait until things kind of matter a little bit more in the next month, and we can kind of really focus in as the NFL winds down. I still liked the in-season tournament because it was meaningful basketball at a time of the year where I don't normally pay attention. I love the games being out in Vegas and seeing kind of like, you could tell it was elevated. There were stars out there, and it was just kind of a different level of basketball. So I think it was a good ad for Adam Silver. People obviously enjoyed it. They had the last game against the Pelicans. The Pacers and the Lakers had over $4 million or had over 4 million people watch it. That's like a big, big number for the NBA this kind of year. So, they did it. Much success. And now let's kind of see how things go. The trade deadline is going to be very interesting, especially locally in Chicago, as they figure out what the Bulls want to do, especially around Zach LaVine, that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a small miracle, speaking of Christmas miracles, if someone would take on Zach LaVine's contract with the way he has been playing. But Bulls, playing pretty well as of late. I feel like Kobe White finally really coming into his own as well. But you do have to find places for those, very large contracts as far as what DeMar DeRozan would be due and Zach LaVine, like we talked about. I'm with you. I mean, it's surprising, too, to see these teams that have been kind of down and out as far as, the Magic, like you mentioned, finally sort of getting back into the winning column. But yeah, it's going to be very telling, which teams are going to go further, obviously, into that trade deadline and see what kind of moves they make, who's going to be, playing more for the lottery if you're the San Antonio Spurs, or if you're going to try to make a push and add a piece or two around your young guys, if you're the Orlando Magic or around the Thunder. The Thunder, I mean, rooting for them because of just all that draft, capital that they have. It's wild to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's move on, Ross. We've missed a lot in a couple weeks, but leading with this last week, it had been talked about pretty heavily, and it's a bummer for. Marvel's had a down year. I know you're one of the biggest superhero movie franchises that I feel like I know. and Jonathan Majors got found guilty with his assault and harassment charge. It's a huge hit for the franchise, with a lot invested in Kang as the new supervillain. And that's just a detriment to Major's character and whatever else you want to say about it. But your thoughts about it, and who's a good backup Kang? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a couple of different options. Remember, Marvel has replaced an actor before. Terrence Howard was replaced with Don Cheadle. Yeah, after
a good
the
pivot.
initial Iron Man movie.
It happened very early on. Happened after one Iron Man. Yeah,
it sure did. Absolutely. Terrence Howard thought he deserved more money, and Marvel said, actually, we can just go get a better actor, and you're fired. So if you're looking at, if they do want to keep that Kang storyline going, and Jonathan Majors, I think, taking all of the off screen stuff away, he is a very good actor. So it will be tough to replace him. Very gifted actor, also very physically gifted, as we've seen even in like the Creed movies and stuff like that. But I got a couple of options. I think if anybody's watched Snowfall before, they know the star of Snowfall was Damson Idris. And I think he'd be a good fit. He's obviously not doing anything right now with Snowfall being done. He can slide right into that Kang spot, and I think he'd be a very good fit. I think Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who's a great actor, he actually has been in the Aquaman movies. He was also the star of the Candyman remake the last couple of years. He's been in recently Ambulance, the Michael Bay movie with what's the guy's name? Jake. What's his? Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal. Thank you.
First Jake I could think of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he would also be a good fit right there. There's been a theory, not a theory, but there's been a push online going around saying, because remember, Kang is he's got different variants. He can shift and change and stuff like that. And some people were saying how much fun it would be if you just called Denzel Washington and you had him be Kang for a little while. And he just says, Kang ain't got shit on me, right? And you let him take it over. I know Denzel Washington would never in a million years be in a Marvel movie, but they got options. They can also, if people kind of watch the Loki finale, I won't spoil it, but they got options to even pivot away from the character altogether. And a lot of people think that they might go like the route of Galactus and take the whole series in space. They got Doom out there. They've got options. So I think most importantly for Marvel, given the recent lackluster success of the last few movies that have been just absolutely dreadful for me, they need to take their time and figure all this out. And I think also the streets, more than wanting a new Avengers movie, we want a good X-Men movie. And we want a new X-Men cast and potentially a new Fantastic Four cast as well.
I've been talking about, movie releases coming out, and not even next year, but 2025, it looks promising. But now obviously Marvel has to pivot from Kang to figure it out from just kind of off year, despite that Guardians of the Galaxy, end to that. They just got to continue to ride this storyline that they've been starting from Iron Man, like we talked about, to see how far they've come to so many spinoffs. You get that fatigue for a while, but I have no doubt that they can come back from it. That you start your expectations all like this. Holiday must-haves, Ross. What do you got? You got eggnog.
You got eggnog.
Obviously.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of I feel like you almost have to like a nice prime rib on one of the days. We're all fans of Christmas ale from Great Lakes.
Oh, I like that.
Yep. So I got to toss that in there. I'm trying to think what else. A nice charcuterie board as a starter.
Sure. Well, you talk about the vibe. The music is big.
Music is big.
Donny Hathaway.
I'm a huge Donny Hathaway fan for Christmas music. Jackson 5, of course. Even Mariah Carey, I promise you, has other Christmas songs other than that one that are awesome. And then the movies. I watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation again this week, which is a favorite. Of course, you got to watch Home Alone. If you want something a little bit more non-traditional, your miles may vary on if Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not. Same thing with Lethal Weapon. Is that a Christmas movie or not? There are some movies that are taking place during the Christmas season that aren't quite Christmas movies, but you can still kind of get into that mood with it. And, for the little ones, The Grinch is always fun. Not that Jim Carrey creepy version. Keep it to the animated.
You got to do the 30-minute Grinch, the animated one is terrific.
Yeah,
that Grinch with Jim Carrey,
terrible. It's terrible. I don't know what he was thinking. I'm sure he got paid handsomely to do it, but it's bad.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Love the original Peanuts Christmas as well. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, however you all celebrate, we certainly hope it is festive and merry and you're with your loved ones or making the best of your holiday situation, if you will. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening in. We'll be back next week. But remember, follow me at The Relevant Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. This whole show will be up on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your audio-only versions of the show. Follow Barroom Network at Barroom Network for all the great shows we have going on here. Catch us live on YouTube next week. Ross, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We'll speak next week, recapping the Cardinals and the Bears, regardless of the outcome. For now, we say deuces. Chicago and beyond. So long, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you.